Happy draft day. It's a Thursday edition of the Morning Minute. Nate Lundy, Mat Smith in for Sean Drotar here as we bring you up to speed on all of the NFL lies this morning. Actually, we're not going to do that here in the video because chances are by the time you watch this, 90% of them will have already changed. But the beauty part is that finally tonight, starting at 6 o'clock, we get to the point where picks are going to start to be made. Let's talk about the Broncos here for a second. I said on the radio show this morning that I don't know why, I don't think they wind up picking at 20. It would not surprise me if they move back, if there's somebody that wants to be able to move up. I think that there are some players that they like, and I think that's players, plural, and therefore they may not be under a lot of pressure to pick at 20. Moving back might still be okay. They may still find what they want.
Yeah, they may still find what they want, especially if they're going to take an offensive lineman. I think that there's certainly going to be one of probably the 3 or 4 guys that they're looking at available, not only lower in the first round, but possibly in that second round. I don't think they move out of the first round completely, but the Broncos definitely have a lot of flexibility. Now, for Denver, what's going to be very interesting to see is if they don't go offensive line. Because if they don't go offensive line, then are they looking to add a playmaker? Is it a guy maybe like Reuben Foster? Or do they move up to go get somebody that we don't even know yet?
Right. I think the point is, and Matt makes a really good point here, if it is offensive linemen that they want to be able to take in the first round, then I think you've got the opportunity to move back because chances are a couple of those guys are still going to be there. And because it's a weaker class, it might be, I don't know for sure, it might be that you've got a lot of the guys all kind of ranked about the same. Maybe at the end of the day today, you would sit back and say, if we had one of these 3 guys, we appreciate it, we think we're in a good spot. What could happen, though, is if John Elway is after a different position, if there's something else he's got his eye on, then you could easily talk me into the concept of them moving up. And I think that's what makes things so interesting with where the Broncos sit, having not made the playoffs and sitting there at 20. It does mean that they could be doing some moving up or down. It's just something that tells me they don't wind up sticking at 20. I've said for weeks that I think John Elway has a trick up his sleeve. Maybe it's in the first round. I will also say this, though. And I tweeted this before. I've talked about it on the radio show. We've talked about it right here in these videos before. I'm not worried about what the Broncos do today. I'm worried about what they do tomorrow. And that's because the second and third round history for them of their picks is not very good. It is not all strikeouts. It isn't. But there also are not really any enormous home runs that they've hit either, with the exception of Derek Wolfe. And so I think that it's what happens tomorrow that I'm going to be far more curious of what this team does than necessarily what they do today. I have never been overly critical of the first round choices that they've had under John Elway. We'll leave Tebow out of this. But I think when we look at what happens on Friday with the second and the third rounds, that to me is where things can wind up getting interesting for the Broncos. That's where my concern is. That's where I think a lot of the focus will be. So by the time we get out of tonight and we're talking about who their pick is tomorrow morning, I think the thing Matt will want to pay attention to is what then winds up happening on Friday, because that's where I've been concerned. Saturday, they've got a great history in the 4th through 7th rounds of finding some good players and even the undrafted free agents. We know that. It's that Friday window in Philadelphia that's got me a little bit worried. It is all about the draft, obviously. Last night, the Rockies got rocked, pun intended, again by the Nationals. They'll wrap up that series with an afternoon game today at Coors Field, but not the last couple of days, not what you've wanted to see out of this team, that's for sure.
Yeah, certainly different than the first 20 games of the season. They gave up, 26 runs in the last 2 games?
I think the Nationals just scored again.
26 runs in the last 2 games. The Rockies, who we thought were rolling along, of course, we've seen this time and time again with this franchise, may need to go out and find an arm. They might have to do it to replace John Gray in the meantime and maybe just find some stability. It's certainly not out of the question in that starting rotation. They got to turn things around.
Now, I will say this. A couple of good points that you can bring up. One is, we said this before, every team goes through a slump. Every team goes through bad games. The trick is to have a good run prior to that so that you don't lose out on a lot. And obviously, they're still sitting with a very good record. Let's also remember they're playing the Nationals. These runs that have happened over the last 2 days have not happened against the Padres. They have not happened against the Blue Jays. They have not happened against teams that are sitting at the bottom of their division. You're talking about a very good team in the Nationals. And so while it's disappointing that they are not facing Strasburg and Scherzer and this is happening to them, at the same time, let's remember that the Nationals are a good team. So we'll keep that in mind as well. Enjoy the draft tonight at 5280sportsnetwork.com throughout the afternoon. You're going to see us posting up some positional previews, 9 of them as a matter of fact, that Ryan Green and Jake Marsing have put together. Make sure you keep your eye out for those. And of course, we'll have all the instant analysis and more as we go go throughout the next few days of what the Broncos do. So stick with us here, 5280sportsnetwork.com and milehighsports.com. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. on the radio show. But for now, for Matt, I'm Nate. We'll see you.